All right, good morning and welcome to the ARC and the launch of ADUDC. My name is Kay Pearson. I am the director of the Community Investment Division for United Planning Organization. This effort is a joint effort between United Planning Organization, the Coalition for Smarter Growth, and it is funded by City Community Development. The idea of it is to make ADUs accessible to low and moderate income households. Um, ADUs have been in existence in one form or another for decades, I guess, since houses have been built. But the financing, the logistics, the process of getting them established has been really out of the reach of low and moderate income households. So I wanted to kind of give an overview of the initiative, and later on we'll get a little deeper dive into what ADUs are and how this initiative will work in DC. But the three basic things we want to accomplish with this grant is to fund 2 ADU units over the next year, or at least begin that process, to create a how-to manual, how to construct an ADU in the District of Columbia, and then suggesting ways to ease the process for low and moderate income homeowners who are not either familiar with or comfortable with the permitting process, the licensing, zoning determinations, and all the steps that you have to take in order to establish an accessory dwelling unit. So today you're going to hear from the people who are critical to that process. We're going to take a bird's eye view of the accessory dwelling unit process in DC. We invite you to be a participant and not just a spectator. We really need feedback. It is not just the few of us doing all of this work. It's everybody giving us feedback and input and helping us to discern this process so that we make DC a friendly place for building ADUs. So right now, without much ado, I really want to bring up our first speaker, who is Polly Donaldson. And she has been involved in innovative housing ideas since serving as the director of the DC Department of Housing and Community Development, and in her former position as the director of Transitional Housing Corporation. And she is a great person to work with, and we're so happy to have her here this morning. Ms. Donaldson.
Good morning. How is everyone today? Good morning. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you, Kay, for that kind introduction. And it is, I bring greetings from Mayor Bowser, who is on vacation as she is resting and recreating. And I know very supportive, as you will hear, of the efforts that this grant is going to promote as well. I also bring greetings on behalf of Interim Deputy Mayor John Falchicchio at the as Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Really, I'm very excited for the city grant, and want to thank Robert for his work on this as well with the United Planning Organization and the Coalition for Smarter Growth. It is really important to look at how the private sector can jumpstart ideas and pilot ideas and really put some creative financing to use, especially when it comes to ADUs. Now, as you know, in DC, we have two types of ADUs, right? We have affordable dwelling units that are produced out of our zoning applications and our commitments that developers make to affordable units that are then administered actually by DHCD as part of the inclusionary zoning program. But there's also, of course, the accessory dwelling units, which is what we're here to talk about today. As an aside, it might be interesting to really think about whether ADUs as a name, meaning for accessible dwelling units, even though I know it's a very much a term of art in the planning world and such, maybe the challenge would be to come up with a name or a term that would be even more meaningful, perhaps, or even more less technical and more as one way to embrace the idea. So I'm very open to suggestion on that, and willing to participate if there are some opportunities for that in terms of what would really resonate in the community. But for now, ADUs it is, and so that is what we are going to do. There are already ADUs as accessible dwelling units are incorporated into several DC government planning tools already. We just this past year, Mayor Bowser adopted the DC resilience strategy, where ADUs, the idea of having ADUs as an element of housing and ensuring that our housing strategy is part of our resilient city strategy, and that is incorporated in there. ADUs are part of our age-friendly DC plan, which is a World Health Organization designation that we have spent many years developing and holding agencies such as the Department of Housing and Community Development accountable for. And ADUs, in the case of the age-friendly, they're referring in many cases to what's called granny flats, which I'm not keen on that term either. So, the fact is, we're really trying as best as possible to embrace the notion of accessible dwelling units and to be able to see that as part of our overall housing efforts here in the District of Columbia. So really trying to look towards that. Now plans, though, we can't just be talking and planning. We obviously have to be setting goals and making investments, and we recognize that and are working on that. As you know, Mayor Bowser at the beginning of this year did set a very specific goal in terms of our overall housing supply here in the District of Columbia, saying that we must, and in part embracing the Council of Governments regional goal, and saying that DC's share of that would be 36,000 additional units of housing between now and 2025, of which 1/3 or 12,000 needed to be affordable. But really, we're talking about raising the overall supply of units across the income spectrum. That is what is needed, and realizing that ADUs very much are a part of that strategy. Given other investments in affordable housing that the mayor has been doing consistently over the last 5 years, and knowing that we in DC have many effective and innovative tools, it is great to have this pilot with ADUs as a way to really show how to incentivize and also but how to educate and inform the community of how they too can participate in achieving the goals of more supply of affordable housing, more supply of housing overall. So I look forward to the panel. I look forward to hearing some of the ideas and some of the challenges as well. And I do know that we are very supportive in the Bowser administration and at the department, and look forward to working with all of you on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Donaldson. There we have our first bit of input, right? Find another name for ADUs. We'll get to work on that. Next, if you've been involved with, we do, Mr. Burns. This was an initiative of Robert Burns. He encouraged us to pursue a robust approach to affordable housing, and then to address the needs of low and moderate income homeowners in the District of Columbia. So this isn't just another, feels like it's not just another project, but one that he feels passionate about. City Community Development is funding this effort, and we are so pleased to work with them. So Robert Burns is its Senior Vice President. Please give him a round of applause to welcome up here.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'll adjust that a little bit too. I appreciate what Polly did. I want to thank Polly up front and Really appreciate the leadership that Polly brings to the department. I appreciate the fact that she comes from a nonprofit background. I think she really gets it, and appreciate her leadership of the department. So thank you, Polly, for being here and for your partnership. And of all the areas that City Community Development funds, housing is probably one of the most important. It also has become one of the largest drivers of inequality across the United States. And expanding housing in U.S. cities, especially cities like D.C., where the price continues to increase, really requires bold, innovative solutions that maybe we haven't tried before in the past. The lack of affordable housing also is shown to disproportionately affect Black and Latino households overall across the country. We feel like this is an effort could build inclusive, diverse, and stable neighborhoods here in D.C. I also wanted to just take a moment and recognize two of my colleagues that are here, Hala Farid and Mark Grant, both of whom are from City and are able to join us today. Hala represents our inclusive housing effort overall, and Mark is from the mortgage division, has been very helpful and thoughtful in this process. So thank you both for being here. One of the areas that also we've talked about a lot is the focus on low to moderate income households. Right now, a lot of lower income households pay more than half of their incomes for housing, or often have to leave DC to find housing. For older homeowners, the ADU effort presents a pathway potentially to greater financial security and wealth if they're able to add an accessory dwelling unit to their existing structure. This is especially important in households where there is significant income equality. And in the DC area, it's important to remember that African American homeowners in DC have a net worth that is 81 times less than those of white homeowners in the district, based on statistics across the area. And enabling particularly African American homeowners to take advantage of a program like this really raises a lot of opportunity, particularly in Ward 7 and 8 here in the city. And to help address this shortfall, and Polly touched upon this, the DC City Council Zoning Commission passed new codes in 2015, and this effort really builds on that. And we're going to hear a lot more from our panel on the specifics of what affordable dwelling units are. And this really is in partnership, and a big thank you to the DC Department of Planning and Zoning, and Housing and Community Development, and the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. Without the public-private partnership, an effort like this does not work. And this is really meant to be a pilot project to figure this out, as Kay outlined. We're really proud as City Community Development to be the founding corporate sponsor for this project, and we will be investing $180,000 towards this first year effort to see what comes forth, what can be learned from it, and I think learn a lot as we go along the way. The effort will identify barriers to development and help pilot solutions to broaden use of ADUs across the city, particularly by low to moderate income homeowners. And permitting homeowners to build ADUs on their properties unlocks new opportunities for wealth building for owners, and also can make more affordable housing available for renters in DC. As a result, the district could have a workable blueprint for assuring that the new code effort really results in more development of affordable housing units. This effort overall complements our overall strategy of affordable housing work across city. It aligns with our national focus on creative affordable housing opportunities, such as community land trust and affordable housing accelerators. And I also want to note, and I take great pride in this, that for the 9th year running, City is the largest affordable housing lender in the country based on banks, and we love to really be part of that effort across the cities we work in. I want to also add that with our support with ADU's launch, we really value, especially the work that Kay has put into this and the team at ADU, appreciate Dana's work on it and the entire team. It's really been a team effort to get to this point, to be able to stand here today and make the announcement, and excited to see what this effort brings forth. So thank you all for being here, and excited that we from City can be part of this effort. Thank you, Kay.
If you've ever worked with UPO in the past 10 to 15 years, you already know Dana Jones. He has been an inspirational, strong, and visionary leader to those of us at UPO. He is a fearless, wise leader who has built the UPO brand to represent excellence in community service. He retires next month with an incredible legacy and a litany of accomplishments. Mr. Dana Jones.
Kind and considerate to an old man. As a point of personal privilege, since she announced my retirement, I'd like to announce my replacement. Would you please stand, Andrea Thomas? Andrea is the president and CEO-elect, and she allows me to be able to say that I am retiring now for the second time, and in both cases, I have been able to bring to organizations my replacement, who in both cases are the first females to head their organizations. And so in our 57-year history at UPO, Andrea will be our first female leader. Let me just say that UPO is excited about this opportunity. Not so much that accessory dwelling units are a new idea or a new thing, but rather the opportunity to think about the issue of affordability and think about what type of environment needs to be created such that the regulations that we have in place now can reach a dire need in our community. We have embarked upon a renewed effort in housing affordability. We've joined partnerships with private sector. We are excited about city's involvement. We thank Robert for his work and his encouragement, and we're also thankful to the coalition for their guidance, instructions, and their determination to try to create the type of environment and regulatory processes and in capital infusion that will allow units to be affordable. I come to this task and leaving UPO as its CEO, but not leaving permanently. What you need to understand is that in my old days, I will spend more time as a strategist and more time guiding processes, including affordable housing development for UPO. And so having spent more time than I'd like to say doing this, but certainly having advised 3 governors on housing policy issues, having been in a nonprofit that developed over 3,000 units, I know a little something about this. And so I will get a chance to focus my attention now on guiding the strategies that will increase the availability of affordable housing stock in the district. And so UPO will be in this mix. Innovation is not new to community action, and we are looking forward to creating some innovative strategies that allow housing affordability to include accessory dwelling units. Thank you for your participation today. I applaud Kay, who has taken this by the horns, if you will, and is leading our effort, and I'm looking forward to even greater things. Thank you.
So what we want to be able to do is teach people how to leverage the assets they have and focus on asset development. So ADUs have been called various things, right? You've already heard granny flat, basement apartment, back house, in-law suite, Echo Cottage, that was new to me when I looked all this up, guest room bungalow, casita, tiny house. But how it works in our market is that it must be independent. So you can't go from your ADU to your house and change adjust heat or fix a fuse, or we don't do fuses anymore, but yeah. You can't make any kind of temperature adjustments, any electrical change, nothing. They must function separately, completely separately. Must be a washer and dryer in each unit if that is what's offered in the ADU. and the sewer system also must be adjusted. So, as of September 16th, thanks to the efforts of the Coalition for Smarter Growth, the Zoning Commission, and Harriet Tregonin, the Zoning Commission approved ADUs provision that made them allowable as a matter of right in low-density residential areas. And don't worry if you don't understand all that. Cheryl's going to explain that, what that means. The first steps in getting it established is that you must have a zoning determination. You must determine whether you're in one of those low-density zoning areas. You must present design and drawings to DCRA. And in the initial stages, those drawings can be pretty simple. But of course, when you get to the permitting stage, your drawings have to be very detailed. You must be able to finance it, and you must build it out once you get all of that in place. There are two basic ways to do this. Even though an ADU can be a basement unit, an attachment, a separate unit on your property, the two basic approaches in building a detached unit would be stick-built. And I'm not going to read all of these steps, but you can see them for yourself. And the challenge with stick-built is that every step has to be inspected. There has to be an inspection for when the rough-in utilities are completed, when the framing and roofing, every step. So that's what takes the time, and it usually takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to build it from the ground up like that. And that doesn't include the 3 to 6 month period you can wait for permitting. So those are all the stages of this. The other alternative to stick-built are manufactured houses. This includes shipping containers, which are now sold in DC, but they're still in the experimental stages. And this is the cost for a shipping container in the District of Columbia at this time. And this slide was provided by Alluvial Construction, who does build them. This gives you a sense of what they look like. Now, unlike stick-built, the containers come self-contained. So they come to the site already constructed, and they have already built in the kitchen, the plumbing, the walls, all of that is done, and it just needs to be finished in the inside and the outside once it's been put on the property, and the proper foundation has to be also put in place. Manufactured housing differs in that it is built in a factory and brought in panels, and usually the panels are 20 to 30 feet wide, and they're constructed on site, and they can be constructed by a crew of 3 to 5 unskilled workers. And that's important because it is a driver, an economic development driver. When you talk about, well, what are the benefits that affordable housing ADU development can bring to the community, and it is the ability to engage people of all skills to build and construct these units. Now, these are some of the units I saw in Portland. I went to Portland 3 weeks ago, and there were, actually a month ago. Portland is the mecca of affordable dwelling units because they developed their regulations 10 years ago, and they are constantly evolving. This is not a one-off process where you allow these to be built and see how it goes. There is a process of constantly revising and reviewing and redoing the regulations so they become consumer friendly. Remember, you're dealing with people who don't have the patience that developers do. Developers can, have money to wait. They can hire permit expediters. Consumers, that's a huge cost and a huge process to them. So this gives you a time, kind of a sense of how long it took, what the square footage was like, what the cost per square foot is. Portland's market is a little more expensive, if you can believe it, than the District of Columbia. But the ones I've put on here, and I will put the whole deck, not only this slide deck, but the whole presentation from Portland's tour on here. And you can see that they've really maximized their space. These all range from 300 to 800 square feet. And they use such things as vaulted roofs. They get really creative with how they interpret the roofing limitations in Portland. But they use space very creatively to make these incredible units. And I've seen all of this. This was a little yard, and they made a patio of it. This one is in process, and these are also a little pricier than what it would cost here. And again, the Portland market is different. The Oregon market is different than ours. Oh, most of them have mini split for heating and cooling. You don't have to do a whole different HVAC construction, and that is a fear that a lot of people have because that can be very expensive. But a split is enough to heat an entire floor, if you will. The exception to that is some of these had concrete floors that radiated heat, and that's how the first floor is heated. It's really pretty cool, and it looks great too. And this is the cheapest one. This was a basement conversion, and it belonged to Robert Liberty. And Robert Liberty, we'll discuss a little bit later, is responsible for bringing a cohort together of people in jurisdictions all over the country putting ADU campaigns together. His unit, let me just show you, a 74,000. It is a studio apartment, and back there's a kitchen, there's a bedroom. And the other thing to note about these spaces is that they are very spare, meaning that you have to construct them too in the architect that allows for some kind of storage space, and also you have to fit the utilities in there. So you still need a water heater, you still need some of those things that make the ADU unit function well. So financing. Financing is probably the biggest challenge that we have to overcome. Normally it is done through conventional channels right now. So that would be your refi. And which one you use really depends on your situation. So if you have great credit and high income, then refi would be ideal for you. If you have equity and not so great credit, then you want to look at a home equity product. If you're over 62 and don't have great credit and don't have great income, you can use the reverse mortgage, and that is something that requires a great deal of counseling with. We think that whenever you use the reverse mortgage, you have to involve your whole family. You have to have a plan. So your children have to know that you're getting a reverse mortgage, because they are going to assume this debt when you leave or pass away. So the people who work with reverse mortgage financing have that in mind, and they encourage families to be involved in the whole process. But it is, if you have a lot of equity and you have the age requirement, it is a viable financing tool. And there are people who do nothing but reverse mortgage financing. After it's built, the rest of the process goes pretty much like any other rental. You vet your tenants. You check their background. After a while, they'll be living very close to you. You can use this for Airbnb, but of course there are limits on how many days you can use. You can also use Section 8 vouchers. You can rent your main residence, as some people do, and just live in the ADU yourself. And you have to be, of course, they're tenants, so you have to use a normal process to evict them. So you want to make that an efficient part of your rental process. Then property management. Of course, you have to keep the unit clean. If you use Section 8, of course, it has to undergo a special inspection, so it is important to maintain it. And you also have to keep great records so that you can maximize your tax benefits from having an ADU. Now, everybody does not like ADUs. We've heard in Montgomery County some pushback from the ADU regulations. And these are some of the objections. People say, well, add density to the neighborhoods. Now, I can tell you, as someone, the good thing about the Portland experience is that you got to talk to both the renters and the homeowners. This is a real change. This is somebody walking in your backyard or in your garage and living there and having a life there with friends and activity. So this is not something everybody will want to do. So, and there was a study in Montgomery County that showed even when there are enabling regulations, it still isn't prolific enough to create a whole nother density program. This is not likely to be in every house in every given neighborhood. So I don't think that is a valid basis on which to push back. Same with parking problems that will be created. Again, you won't have the density, and also there are limitations on who can live in an ADU. There was a HUD-sponsored affair last month or in June, where they had all these innovative houses. They had shipping containers, they had modular, they had all kinds. And what they said, what the people who made them said, they had to adjust to the different lifestyle. They couldn't store what they used to. They couldn't have the clothes that they were used to having. And it was a process of cutting back. So this, again, is not going to be, something you see in every corner, in every neighborhood, in every house. Also, there was complaints it would degrade the neighborhood because now we have these strange people coming in these little houses in the back. And there are limits on Airbnb rentals, as I mentioned earlier. So that should not happen. And it's going to increase property values. Now, there was a guy who used to come to our workshops in the early days of this, who used to say, you're driving up the prices. But the brokers who spoke in Portland said that these are evaluated differently than houses. So you wouldn't appraise, when it comes to appraising, you wouldn't appraise a 3-bedroom townhouse with a house with an ADU. They're going to be in two different markets. And although we are in the early stage of ADU development, that makes sense. You have a built-in rental unit, and you have a house that is made for one family. So I don't see that as a valid objection. I mean, are there problems? I'm sure there will be, and I'm sure, we'll rise to meet them. And this part of this process is figuring out what that is, because we do want to be benefit to a neighborhood, to a community, not a burden. And so the potential benefits include increasing the income for the homeowner, increasing the value of the house, increasing generational wealth, and then raising the skill level of the homeowner, because now you have to be involved in your development process. You have to manage the property. Either most people, we did a focus group in the earlier days, most people wanted to do that. They didn't think they needed a property manager. So these are skills to enhance the, again, strengthen the homeowner. Because in this age of greater need, lower assistance, the more skills you can acquire, the more you can do for yourself, the better off you will survive and thrive. And that is what we're aiming for. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I also met people in Portland who were doing innovative things all over the country. LA Maz has a program where they support ADU development in exchange for your renting it out to Section 8 renters. Hello Housing in San Mateo County is about to launch a multi-jurisdictional program where they're actually going to give $50,000 to each jurisdiction who allows the development of ADUs in order to encourage it. And you see there, each one are doing, and we're all just still trying to discern if the government helps you build an ADU so that it's affordable to you, then your obligation on the other side will be to rent to people of a lower income, 50% or below. And it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but that's the broader concept. Oh, and I met this lady, Kate Allen, Equity First. This is an awesome project. They provide $130,000 of financing, and they give you the option of, if you can't finance it yourself, they will put that financing there. Now, they're paying for, and then they seek gap funding from the government. They're paying for the whole thing, and they will still give you an income from the ADU, but you have a 15-year affordability period, meaning that you have to rent it to someone 50% or below, and after that period, it is all yours. So if everything's paid off, you can pretty much do what you want, but the thought is that you will still rent it to people who are below 50% AMI. Now, how do we get started? How do we get here? Oh, Preservation Trust. This is a developer in Oregon who wants to fund it without any kind of government assistance. And he, again, is grappling with his affordability period, but that is his concept. This guy must have very deep pockets, but he's very excited, and he is ready to launch his Preservation Trust. So we out of that, we formed a work group. As I said, this group has been responsible for changing the provisions at the Zoning Commission to make them buildable as a matter of right. The work group was organized to make ADUs accessible and ultimately scalable. We had our first conference in October of 2017 at the AIA headquarters, just maybe 100 of us, stakeholders, professionals, just kind of trying to figure out what we're going to do with this thing. And then Robert Liberty, who I showed you earlier, led a national group funded by Maura Brophy of Federal City Council to connect all of the little efforts around the country so that we could make a best practices kind of compilation. And we have gone through 1 year of that, and it's amazing what people are doing around the country. So we're very proud to have been a part of that. And today, as you know, we're here to launch ADUDC. I want to continue the conversation. We're going to give you a link to the listserv. We have already an ADU listserv that is used by people who are building building an ADU, by government officials, professionals who weigh in. You have a question, somebody out there will answer it. So I will give you the information. We also have a sign-in sheet so that if you want to sign up to be on the listserv, you are welcome to do so. So with that, I'm done. And I hope that has brought you a little bit up the learning curve in this. It's a lot. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to understand, a lot to grapple with. But again, we are here to figure it out for low and moderate income housing dwellers. So with this, I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and I need the panelists to come up here and get mic'd. Everyone else, please enjoy the food. Is presented by Sean Lightfoot of Art Adrenaline. And we appreciate him catering for us this morning. And I appreciate you coming out this morning. So please eat, have a biological break, and come back. Thanks.